and welcome to Herp A Derp, a podcast about breaking the stigma on herpes and empowering the community. I'm your host, Erin DeVost. As always, you can review my episodes on YouTube, Anchor, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also find the link to the channel on the podcast's Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter page at Herp A Derp Podcast. Thanks! Hey Herp A Derpers! This week's episode, I'm going to get really nerdy with you. I'm going to talk nerdy to you about gene editing. Gene editing is something that has been explored in the science field for the past few years now, and something I've been kind of nerding out on, just wanting to see like what is to come of it. And so I came across this article, actually a few months ago now, talking about gene editing and also how it could lead to a potential herpes cure. And so I just wanted to share my thoughts with you and, just what I learned. And, it's really cool to also understand the scientific and medical side of herpes as well, because it not only puts you in a perspective to actually know what you're talking about when it comes to herpes, but also just knowing that there are so much more to there's so much more to what is the herpes virus. Like the herpes simplex virus is really not that simple. It's actually a little bit complicated in our bodies too, and not to discourage or put you down in that way, but it's just something to really understand as well, like what is going on like inside our bodies that makes this virus, and why there hasn't been a cure for it, and what makes it so complicated. And so let me just dive right into it. Recent estimates propose that at least half of all Americans have type 1 herpes, and up to a fifth of all Americans have type 2 herpes. And, it just seems like more and more diagnoses are getting out there and, spreading and becoming more and more common. The herpes simplex virus becomes more and more stubborn. And so what I mean by that is scientists have been working on vaccines for over 80 years, like figuring out preventing spreading herpes, helping our immune systems ward off herpes infections, or medically help fight back the virus once it's taken over our bodies. And so there's been repeated failures for having these promising new techniques, including one vaccine that actually I had talked about in a previous episode, that had a promising future about a decade or so ago, after the big pharma giants had spent millions of dollars and years' effort into this research. And so it really casts like a gloom and doom aura over herpes research too, just because there's been so many of these types of failures. And in recent years, a few researchers have started to see what might be on the cusp of not only developing a therapeutic and medical vaccine to protect against or manage the virus, but to actually cure those who already infected. And so that, kind of brings the spin on things, right? Like, why not help those who are already infected? Just kind of blows my mind. It's never been talked about before. But anyways, this potential breakthrough, radical in a way, like courtesy of gene editing, and which in a way is surprising but also not surprising, just because gene editing has something I've been closely following, but also it's come up a lot in the news lately. And especially one example that comes to mind is developing genetically genetically modified babies that scientists in Asia were currently exploring, and it was a very interesting topic. I believe I heard it on NPR, National Public Radio, about that segment, so definitely check that out. If not, I'll definitely put it in the show notes in terms of what I mean. And so before diving into the potential of gene editing, it's also something that we should understand is the herpes infection itself, and that it's worth exploring that why vaccines have had such a hard time tackling the herpes virus. And so when herpes enters our bodies, it uses strategies as to evolve and evade our immune systems. And, quote, type 1 hides in the trigeminal ganglia, a ball of neuronal cell bodies close to our ears. And type 2 hides in the dorsal root ganglia, which is a body of cells that's well hidden on either sides of spines, end quote. And that was by Sita Ashwith, the University of Pennsylvania professor and herpes vaccine researcher. And I had no idea when I was reading that it was, the virus can be tucking behind our ear for type 1 and for type 2 to be in our spines. And so just kind of imagining a little, little herpes cell body hanging out behind my ear and my spines. It's so interesting, and I never thought about that. And so our immune systems, can't chase the viruses there. It was, it's hard to get to. The immune system and nerve system are completely different things, but also, not fairly close together in terms of what our body functions for being immune in ear and spine. But that's just me rambling. And the idea of gene editing is that you could train the systems without acting out on the nervous system too. Just imagine these enzyme aminobodies, if you will. But so herpes is free to chill there, hang out where in the ear and the spine, then periodically surge back out towards our skin, creating symptoms and sores like shedding, and also where everything, the blisters and ulcers of it all, where it affects us. And so the medications, we always know to go to the don't make fun of me, I can't pronounce these correctly, but Oxyvior and Valsiflora are pretty effective to control this task, and they reduce the number and the severity of the outbreaks over time. It decreases by, I believe I read, between 70 and 80% per year. So, it does, also doesn't really do anything to tackle, the psychological stress and that many of us experience when we carry the virus, which, we all know what that is. It is the stigma stress, what we put on our bodies, and those stressors that cause those outbreaks and reactions. So now on to gene editing. And in this Men's Health article, why gene editing may hold a promise of a herpes cure, Keith Jerome of Seattle's French Hudson Cancer Research Center explains researchers can go into the affected nerve cells with molecular scissors and either clip out parts of the virus or basically destroy the entire thing, which is pretty big. And with the virus effectively neutered or, maintained, someone with herpes can then be functionally cured. So, you know, simple as that, right? Like taking that gene, just simply taking it out. You don't have it anymore. And research into gene editing as a form of treatment for persistent viruses is really nothing new in the way, and I was kind of surprised because Jerome has, been studying it for over a decade. But the tools that, other old gene editing editors are relatively difficult to manipulate and to navigate in this. And in order to change a gene to target the virus, you have to change the structure, in this case, an enzyme, to recognize what needs to do. And needless to say, it's pretty fucking difficult to do. And the interest in gene editing had, really taken off in these past 5 to 10 years, thanks to the emergence of CRISPR. And that is a gene editing tool that's much easier and cheaper to manifest, to really take into what you can control with it. And especially in these past few years, the gene editing by the CRISPR has led to a flurry of researchers and agency funding about gene editing cures too. So in a way, it's pretty exciting, and the CRISPR is based on therapies for herpes, and however, they haven't had much promise as to date. And so the article suggests the best attempts to use this to tackle herpes was in infected mice in labs, and they were only able to knock out 2 to 4% of the virus. So that doesn't even compare to the success rate of the current medications to cure and calm down our current herpes symptoms. So, and despite this progress and potential, the gene editing tool in some ways has a ways off. It's worth exploring, the human body and those who are willing to do these kind of research and willing to literally be tested for this. And once humans get tested for the CRISPR and other gene editing methods, they just need to be careful of the side effects and the pain and the mutations that could be uncontrollable and disruptive in the body. So because once you take something away and just simply take it away, how does your body react to that? And that also researchers need to figure out how much of the gene editing therapy will need to wipe out the nerve and immune system cells to really be a cure, right? Would 90% functionally kill the virus, or do we need to go a full 100%? And so that's kind of scary in a way. It's just kind of saying with chemo with cancer, gene editing with these taking the herpes virus out. It's a very interesting concept, and kind of what my thoughts are on this is that in the gloom-and-doom world of herpes treatment and research, the successes but mostly failures that have happened, in a way gene editing cures can be promising and kind of exciting, to really see if it can work in a human body, and also how much of this would be taken, but also how much of it and how much will it cost is another thing too. And so gene editing is relatively still new to the world of science and exploration, and it's definitely something cool to look into, and and also when may come down to finding a herpes cure. It's something worth exploring, so really want to kind of see where it is. And kind of at the end of this whole like spiel and like learning more, I'll put this in the show notes to the article as well, so you guys can really dive into it and understand and maybe even pronounce the words better than me. But, no matter the results of, whether there is the potential to a herpes cure or not, we are still amazing individuals wanting to make a difference in the herpes community. Like, be there. Like, everyone, like, we are so supportive of each other. And as in everyone, like, as in, like, you, me, like, lovers, friends, activists, and community members, we are all in our immunity and believing we are more than just herpes, too. Like, and herpes affects everyone. Like, we are not alone, and we are here for each other no matter what. And these like little articles that I can be showing you, like talking nerdy to you about the possibility of like gene editing and also the science and such that's out there, is something really important to kind of seek into, like to know my facts. Like, I want to be able to provide that information for you on the Herp A Derp as well. Like, just really I want to know your thoughts, like really, in a way, like talk about this. Like, I know it's a fully loaded question, knowing like gene editing and like the potential that it has behind it. But, it makes us wonder, and that we're also like, willing to test this like gene connected waters and be a part of this herpes research in the world. So I just am really happy I'm able to share this with you. If anything, it's just information that I'm finding interesting, and you're more welcome to comment and like want to know more. I'll be providing links in the show notes. So always just know that there's a lot of potential up there, and I love being able to stay positive as well. So yeah. This also reminds me to tell you that Herp A Derp and Everyone in Hands, Herpes Activist Networking to Dismantle Stigma, will be counting down to a very groundbreaking day in April. We can't wait to share the evolution of the revolution with you starting April 1st. As always, feel free to share or comment on this podcast episode through YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or email at herpaderpodcast@gmail.com. Anchor listeners can now leave voicemail messages after listening to the podcast episode to get those deep reflections. It's super fun to do and share your thoughts.